Hey, everybody. Glad to have you here. What an amazing session we had before on systemic biases. And so now I am happy to introduce Dr. Lawrence Ampofo, who is the Director of Growth at the AI Responsibility Lab. Now, he's about to give an amazing presentation on the so what of responsible AI and how to really operationalize responsible AI in your organization. And so, without further ado, Dr. Lawrence.
Thanks so much, Todd, and thank you everyone here for having me. I'm just going to share my screen with you now. Perfect. Okay, so you should all be able to see my screen now. So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Dr. Lawrence Ampofo, as you've just heard, and I am the Director of Growth at the AI Responsibility Lab. I'm really, really grateful for Todd and the rest of his team at the AI LA community for the opportunity to speak with you here today. So today I'm going to talk to you about, I'm really going to focus on the so what of AI responsibility. And this talk, I just want to reassure everybody, it's not just for AI experts, it's for absolutely everyone. So no matter what your background is or what your affiliation is, I'm really, really excited to take you on this journey with me for the next 30 minutes or so. But I think it's probably fair at this point to give you a little bit of background into myself and also my team here at the AI Responsibility Lab. So my team here, what we've done is we've built out AirOS, which is a platform for companies to start and run world-class AI responsibility programs. So what I would invite you all to do here, everyone who's logged on today, I'd invite you all to just, everyone in the symposium, to, if you want to explore what AirOS is all about and what it can do for you, just to visit responsibility.ai or follow us on Twitter at joinairl. But also, to give you a little bit of a better sense of myself, I think the best thing really to know about me is that I'm most interested in evolving the AI responsibility conversation from the conceptual or the theoretical, and I really want to ground it all and to think about how can we operationalize responsible AI. I really want to move the conversation from what if to how might we. And to do that, we really need to get 4 things right. And those 4 things are our vision, our ideas, our tools, and also our incentives. Now, if we were to break, I think to really understand what I've just said, we really need to break those 4 elements apart to picture how we're going to operationalize responsible AI. And we can think of these 4 pillars in this way. So number 1, to operationalize responsible AI, it really requires the right vision. Responsible AI, and particularly, as I mentioned before, grounding it, it really requires us to have a strong working goal of what we want out of responsible AI. And also, we need to really have the right vision of how that future works. Number 2, operationalizing responsible AI requires the right ideas. If we want to build out powerful systems, we need sturdy ideas that we can use as building blocks. Number 3, the right programs require the right tools. If we want organizations to change how they use AI, we need powerful software tools that help companies enable change. And fourthly, the right programs really, really require the right incentives. No amount of vision, ideas, or software will help us unless we incentivize organizations to really value AI responsibility. So to go into this in a little bit more detail, let's firstly talk about vision. To start, it's very, very helpful to get a sense of AI's impact. And to do that, I'd like to talk about electricity. In the early 20th century, the rise of widely available electric power in industrialized nations changed every facet of human life forever. It changed how we worked, how we played, communicated, traveled. It even changed how we slept. Electrification touched more of the human experience than any other technology in the past century. AI similarly will reshape our work, our communities, sexuality, economies, governance, education, religions, health, and even our very definition of what it means to be a person. To us at the lab, we think of AI as electrification part 2. It's a foundational technology that will fundamentally and permanently alter the organization of human life, just as electrification did a century ago. I think next on that 4-pillar axis we were looking at previously, we need to talk about where AI is today. And that's mostly a conversation about acceleration. The past few years have really given us real indications of how fast things are moving. I want to share with you 3 examples that really drive the point home for us at the lab. So number 1, the pandemic really has sped up AI adoption. The pandemic that we're all experiencing at the moment has accelerated many timelines for the adoption of AI. In 2020, more than 80% of companies and governments around the world had either adopted or planned to adopt AI programs much faster than they had originally planned. And this is largely to enable a contactless and remote world. Number 2, AI-powered human rights violations are on the increase. AI systems are being used in ways that are fundamentally misaligned with human rights. AI-powered policing disproportionately harms communities of color, and the ongoing genocide of the Uyghur and the Rohingya people is a dual crisis underpinned by AI-powered social control and Facebook algorithmic feedback loops. And in the past month, we've had reports of the first lethal autonomous weapons being utilized in Syria. Number 3, AI really is coming for your Slack-based job. By way of a slightly humorous example, Pamela Mishkin of OpenAI recently tasked their AI system, GPT-3, to write a novel sea shanty about the container ship Ever Given, as it was lodged sideways in the Suez Canal. The result was hilarious, but also disconcerting. Large language models like GPT-3 are imperfect tools, but even this slightly absurd example highlights the subtlety and sophistication that these tools already possess. No one ever taught GPT-3 what a song, a sea shanty, container ship, or a canal was, and yet in mere moments it was capable of generating passable shanties. If your job involves looking at a screen, thinking and typing on a keyboard, a system like GPT-3 is coming for it. Tools like GPT-3 are only a few iteration years away from being able to do most of your job, mostly correctly, most of the time, and for a fraction of the cost of your salary. To us in the lab, all this means is that we have a small window of opportunity, which is right now, to build the ideas, the tools, and the incentive structures that help us invent the future that we want when it comes to AI. It's important to remember that we invent the future that we want. We do it daily in our choices when we choose optimism over pessimism, when we choose what to invest in, what we build, and what we accept responsibility for. The future is not a passive thing that happens to us eventually. Our choices invent the future that we will live in every single day. And that, to us at the lab, is deeply, deeply inspiring. Next, let's unpack the ideas that we will need to succeed at AI responsibility. And I think firstly, it's useful for us to get precise about what we mean when we say that word. To us at the AI Responsibility Lab, AI responsibility is an umbrella term for 3 connected practices: AI ethics, AI governance, and AI compliance. Together they form a hierarchy and sit atop one another. The base of the pyramid, as you can see, is AI ethics. AI ethics aligns artificial intelligence with our notions of virtue, and simply put, it brings together our concepts of the good life and of how we should conduct ourselves and run our communities. AI ethics is concerned with what we should and shouldn't do with artificial intelligence. It's the fundamental why underneath AI responsibility. AI governance builds on AI ethics. AI governance describes the specific rules that an organization follows to operate ethically with artificial intelligence. AI governance really is less about virtue and more about processes. And if ethics is the why, AI governance is the how. Finally, AI compliance builds on AI governance. Compliance is how companies prove that they have good AI governance practices. It's the so what at the end of the day, and most closely deals with the financial incentives. Inside AI ethics, we discover how AI interacts with our virtues. To explore that, we first assert that when AI systems fail, they can harm people and create risks for companies. When they fail for one of three reasons. Either a person failed or people failed, a process failed, or an AI technology itself failed. These three types of failures are risk vectors, the specific causes of AI failures that can cause harm or risk. And even though AI is a cutting-edge tool, most of its failures are old school. It's often the lowest tech parts of the formula that cause the high-tech failures. Most harms and risks are not created by the AI technology itself. They're mostly caused by people and processes. When AI failures happen, what virtues do they violate? What parts of the health of our institutions do they threaten? To answer that meaningfully, a company can ask itself the following questions. A company can ask itself, for example, did we harm the ecology? Did we treat people unfairly? Is our company more brittle to change because of AI? Did we make decisions that cannot be explained? Did we violate human rights, or were people deceived? Did we violate human autonomy? Did we hand over too much control to AI? Did we become vulnerable to attack? Did we destroy livelihood and opportunity? Or did we abuse people's personal data? These are the ways, amongst many, that AI violates our virtues and institutions. We call these risk factors, and each risk factor has a different impact on a company and all those stakeholders around it. These risks and harms are felt by real people, and it's helpful to organize these people as different types of stakeholders inside and outside a company. In so doing, we can understand how each stakeholder group experiences AI harms and risks differently, and also how they can each exert a unique pressure on the company to change. For example, customers and the press can pressure companies to change by altering their purchasing behavior and causing reputational damage. Labor advocates can incentivize companies to change through strikes and collective action. Regulators can also pass laws. Tax collectors can create financial carrots and sticks. Creditors and insurers can pressure companies to change through debt and insurance terms. And perhaps, I think, more than most other stakeholders, creditors and insurers appreciate that crisis is not a possibility. Rather, it's an inevitability. It's not a matter of if, but when. When we view AI through the lens of the emergency management cycle, we're reminded of the inevitability of AI crisis. This really can be sobering, but it can also be inspiring. If an AI harm emergency is inevitable, that also means that AI responsibility measures are inevitable as well. So the question to leaders becomes this: In what half of this cycle do we want to invest? The right half or the left half? Do we want to invest in mitigation and preparedness when we can do it on our own terms? Or are we investing in AI responsibility as part of response and recovery? Next, I'm going to focus my talk on the tools that will help us to succeed to adopt a proactive rather than reactive approach to AI responsibility. Software tools are a core part of any mature AI responsibility strategy. Compared to manual processes or consultative advisory services, software-focused approaches to AI responsibility have two major advantages. Number one, software can become more valuable and effective as more people use it over time. This is the AI value flywheel effect. And secondly, software is capital efficient. A little bit of time and money creates a disproportionate amount of value as output. As AI adoption goes mainstream, responsibility efforts won't be able to keep up unless we use software to help us. If AI responsibility requires high-touch expert advisory services, AI will scale without AI responsibility ever catching up. Software lets everyone keep up with the changing AI responsibility landscape. So for us here at the lab, we think that great AI responsibility tools should do four things when it comes to AI risk. And great tools should, number one, discover risk. It should demystify it, diagnose it, and then decrease it. Discovering readiness and fit is the first step of any great change management journey. Should we actually embark on this? Not every company using AI is equally affected by AI risk. Not every company using AI is equally ready to embark on a change management journey. Demystifying AI risk also means helping every stakeholder form a connection to the ways AI responsibility touches their work. Each role at each company has different relationships to AI risk, and good software should work to bridge knowledge gaps and help everyone feel empowered to be an agent of change. Diagnosing how a company's people, processes, and AI technologies create risk will create the heat map of where to focus their specific mitigation efforts. Great tools should assess and diagnose a company's unique AI risk profile. Decreasing AI risk based on that company's unique risk profile will require tools that allow us to deep dive into one glaring facet of AI risk, or a broad approach to empower companies to manage guided change management journeys. In many instances, both will be needed at some point. However, not every piece of software needs to do every one of these things, nor does it need to address every piece of the puzzle. But the right tool should be flexible and agnostic, useful for any company in any industry using any type of AI system for any purpose. When we developed AirOS, we built a tool for leaders to manage an AI responsibility journey. AirOS is less about AI model management and more focused on the collaborative change management. For example, when Fiddler was launched by an ex-Facebook team, they built the specific AI explainability tool they believed they had always been missing. Fiddler is less about empowering change management and more focused on model management. The same goes for Arthur and for Chatterbox. And what I'm really trying to emphasize to you all today is that there are no one-size-fits-all tools. So the question then becomes, what problem are we trying to solve right now? Do we need help getting started on a change journey? Do we need vertical specific tools, or do we need model monitoring tools? Do we need a collaboration environment, or do we need better AI explainability tools? Do we need a risk diagnostic, or do we need all of these things? For every tool, there's a purpose, and for every purpose, there's a tool. No matter where your organization is on your AI responsibility journey, there are tools to help you. Finally, I'd love to talk to you about the incentive structures that we need for AI responsibility to succeed. In particular, at the lab, we're optimistic about the financial incentives being a meaningful way for companies to be motivated to act. Financial incentives provide a clear so what for AI governance. It helps companies make progress against an AI responsibility change management program, and it will also improve your profitability and credit worthiness. What lies between better governance and better terms on debt is AI compliance. We fundamentally believe at the lab that AI responsibility certification programs will proliferate in the next few years. My team isn't the only one thinking about this problem, and undoubtedly more independent private certification protocols will emerge. However, if we are to succeed as a field, our AI responsibility certifications need to get 4 things right. Number 1, AI responsibility certification programs should favor progress over perfection. AI responsibility really is a journey, and certification programs should respect and reflect that. We should want progress, not perfection. Number 2, these programs should be interoperable. All programs should become more useful when there are strong bridges between them, and it really should be easy to move between them or translate scores and rubrics. Number 3, programs should be trustless. Certifications should be community efforts and should operate with minimal central authority. Blockchain technologies are perfect ways to build transparent, trustless ways to do this. And fourthly, they should empower the next generation of AI itself. We predict that sooner than we expect, semi-autonomous AI systems will work alongside humans. Forward-looking AI responsibility certifications should empower collaboration and cooperation between people and machines. However, all the ideas, all of the vision and tools in the world won't make AI responsibility a widely adopted practice until there are strong motivations for companies to adopt it. So what would that take? What would it take for companies to feel like they need to act? There probably isn't one single answer to that question. There's a handful of theories of change management. They have a few things in common. Companies really require motivation and a sense of urgency before change can happen. Different companies in different places are motivated by different things, and that plurality is to our benefit. And here's why. We can remember that we, all of us here as part of this symposium, are somewhere in the 25 dimensions of stakeholders around a company. Each of us has particular ways that we may pressure a company to change their behavior. And each of the 25 different stakeholders inside and outside a company is a new point of leverage. In this sense, as stakeholders, we're both the levers and the fulcrums for change. We're the critical force multiplying points that allow all of us as a society to more effortlessly create a world of AI responsibility. As champions of AI responsibility, we are not Sisyphus. We're not doomed to toil senselessly. We're Archimedes, and like he did 2,200 years ago, we can proudly proclaim, give us a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and we shall move the world. No matter who you are, you're empowered to make AI responsibility a reality. If you're in an academic setting, your university can be part of the solution. If you're an investor or financier, your investment determines what future has the resources to become real. If your company uses AI, you have a choice to invest in AI responsibility when it's on your terms before a crisis occurs. If you're a member of a community affected by AI, and to be honest, that's all of us, these conversations you have when you leave here today form a chorus of voices. Talk to people. Talk about AI in policing, about AI in unemployment, and also about AI and human rights, because you have more power than you think to shape what happens next. If you're looking to get started on your AI responsibility journey, or if you want to know what to do next, reach out to us. You can contact me at lawrence@theairesponsibilitylab.com, and we're also online at responsibility.ai, at airesponsibilitylab.com, and also on Twitter at joinairl. We're here to help you invent the future. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Lawrence. That was wonderful. Everybody, now we're going to move into an interactive breakout session led by team members from the AI Responsibility Lab. From there, you will find in sessions 4 links. Depending on your last name, you will have a breakout session. They are listed A through D, E through K, L through Q, and R through Z. So based on the first letter of your last name, move to the appropriate breakout session, where then we will begin to explore on an interactive basis what we've seen out of AI responsibility and what we can do next. Thank you so much.